Welcome to the Midnight Mind, where we study the truth while the world sleeps. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and while you're at it, hit that like button for me. I really would appreciate it. Tonight, we're back in the Midnight Library for the greatest book series, where we explore the truths hidden by the world's most influential writers and thinkers. It's almost midnight, and tonight, we uncover the hidden secrets of Plato's Republic.
Have you ever felt that the world you live in was engineered long before you were born? Your options chosen, your beliefs shaped, your place silently assigned. Most people read the Republic as a philosophical meditation on justice, but Plato was doing something far more unsettling. He was sketching a blueprint for building a society from the ground up. Not a democracy, not a marketplace of free individuals, something closer to a psychological machine designed for order, and whether you realize it or not, you live inside echoes of that machine today. Plato begins with a premise so jarring that even modern readers shy away from it. He believed that people are not born equal in capacity or character. Some are built for command, others for obedience, and most for labor. His line feels cold, but it carries an undeniable weight. One man should practice one thing, the thing to which his nature is best suited. The Republic doesn't ask whether this is pleasant. It asks whether a stable society can survive without acknowledging hierarchy as a natural law. When you understand this foundation, the entire work transforms. Plato isn't exploring justice abstractly. He's diagnosing human psychology. He believes that if you want a stable society, you must begin by classifying people, not by wealth or popularity, but by temperament and capacity. This idea cuts into the core of the Midnight Mind worldview. Power always begins with classification. Once you sort people into roles, you can shape their reality. And whoever shapes reality doesn't just rule the state, they rule the mind. Plato's world is divided into 3 layers, each designed with precision. At the top are the guardians, the rulers who never touch money, who never form traditional families, who live as a collective mind trained from childhood. Beneath them stand the auxiliaries, the loyal defenders conditioned to love order above all. And below them are the producers, the farmers, craftsmen, and workers who make society function. But the chilling detail is this: each class has a different relationship to truth. Knowledge itself becomes a tool for control. The guardians receive philosophy, logic, and the deeper structures of reality. The auxiliaries receive discipline, loyalty, and the stories of heroic obedience. The producers receive what keeps them functioning, nothing more. This is not inequality by accident. It is inequality by architectural design. To Plato, giving everyone the same truth would create chaos, ambition, and revolt. Stability requires different minds to hold different versions of the world. This is the first hint that the Republic is not a guide to justice. It's a manual for psychological engineering. But Plato goes further. He argues that society must be unified by a narrative powerful enough to quiet dissent. Something sacred, something unquestioned. This is where the infamous noble lie enters. He crafts a myth claiming that every citizen is born with a certain metal in their soul. Gold for rulers, silver for enforcers, bronze for workers. It's propaganda before propaganda had a name. The brilliance of the myth is that it transforms hierarchy from oppression into destiny. People no longer feel assigned, they feel chosen. The mechanism is simple and devastating. People accept their position if it feels meaningful. Modern regimes use flags, slogans, national myths. Plato simply formalized the idea. He understood that control doesn't begin with force, it begins with story. A society is shaped less by laws than by the myths it whispers into the minds of its children. This is why his next move is so radical. Education, in his system, isn't about teaching facts. It's about shaping the soul. Knowledge is not the goal. Conditioning is. Plato rewrites education as psychological programming. Children must hear no stories that create fear, no poetry that awakens rebellion, no music that stirs chaotic emotions. They must be trained to love order, to fear disorder, and to internalize the hierarchy as natural. What books people read, what music they hear, what heroes they admire, all of it is curated. To him, you can cultivate a citizen the same way you can cultivate a garden, control the inputs, and the mind grows in the direction you desire. Freedom becomes unnecessary once desire itself is trained. This brings us to one of the most striking elements of Plato's vision, the philosopher-king. At first glance, the concept feels noble, a leader immune to corruption, shaped by reason alone. But look deeper, and you see something more calculated. The philosopher-king is not an ordinary person elevated to power. He is the product of a lifelong psychological regimen, a mind scrubbed of personal ambition, shaped to value truth over desire, crafted to rule as a function rather than as an individual. He is less a king and more a constructed instrument. Plato believed that only such a ruler could avoid corruption because he would not be driven by the appetites that corrupt ordinary people. His education filters out greed, pride, and impulsiveness until what remains is a being who sees the world as a structured system of forms and functions. The ideal leader is, in a sense, post-human, trained out of the flaws that make human nature dangerous. This is the apex of Plato's social engineering, a ruler who governs not from passion, but from design. Yet even this isn't the darkest part. The true core of Plato's blueprint is the belief that the stability of a society depends on controlling emotion and imagination. For this reason, he restricts artists, poets, actors, anyone capable of stirring the passions. To him, imagination is dangerous precisely because it bypasses reason. A powerful story can undermine the state faster than an invading army. Cultural control therefore becomes political control. By limiting art, Plato isn't being prudish, he's being strategic. Everything in his system leads to one objective: stability at all cost. No internal conflict, no competing narratives, no uncontrolled ambition. Society is a perfectly balanced organism where each part stays in its designated role. To Plato, deviation is not freedom, it is a structural flaw. And once you begin to see the Republic through this lens, it becomes clear that Plato wasn't describing an ancient city. He was designing a psychological architecture that has echoed through every controlled society in history. When you follow Plato deeper into his design, you begin to see that the structure of the city is only the outer layer. The real battleground is the inner life of the citizen. Plato believes that order survives not because citizens fear punishment, but because they internalize the shape of the society itself. A controlled city requires controlled hearts, people who feel the boundaries long before they ever test them. This is the psychological core of the Republic, stability achieved by shaping desire rather than suppressing it. This becomes clearest when Plato describes the surveillance of the soul, the internal policing force that grows inside citizens after years of conditioning. In the Republic, he writes that the just man puts himself in order. It sounds noble, but within his system it means something darker. The citizen learns to monitor their impulses, correct their thoughts, and restrain their imagination long before any external authority needs to intervene. The state succeeds when the mind becomes its own god. From childhood to adulthood, Plato imagines an education that instills discipline, not as a burden, but as an instinct. The citizen learns to distrust extremes of emotion. They learn to associate stability with virtue and disorder with danger. They learn to place their identity within a class that was chosen for them. A society built on such conditioning doesn't need violent enforcement. The people carry the enforcement inside themselves. This is why Plato's city resembles a living organism, every part behaving as if guided by an invisible pulse. Plato's goal is not harmony in the modern sense. It is predictability. He sees human ambition as a threat to the entire order unless it is carefully redirected. The producers must desire craft and productivity. The auxiliaries must desire loyalty. The guardians must desire truth and nothing else. By aligning desires with social function, Plato removes friction from the system. A revolution is impossible when no one wants what they are not designed to have. Control becomes sustainable because the people become self-aligned components in a perfectly tuned machine. But a machine that runs on psychological alignment must also protect itself from destabilizing influences. This is why Plato turns his attention to music, poetry, and storytelling, the emotional forces that shape a culture's imagination. He knows that a story can carry rebellion more subtly and more powerfully than any political speech. A melody can stir impulses that philosophy cannot quiet. A hero in a poem can teach a child to reject authority. To Plato, imagination is a weapon, and a dangerous one if left in the hands of artists instead of rulers. His solution is decisive. Art must be regulated. Music must be chosen for its emotional effect. Stories must depict virtue as obedience, not defiance. Poetry that glorifies chaos, violence, or rebellion must disappear from the city. This is not censorship for morality's sake, it's censorship for stability's sake. Plato understands that emotion moves faster than reason, and whoever controls emotion controls the trajectory of society. It is the ancient blueprint for cultural engineering, a strategy that echoes in every regime that fears ideas more than armies. At the peak of Plato's controlled society stands the philosopher-king, a figure engineered to be immune to corruption. But his existence reveals something deeper, the belief that a leader must be shaped, not selected. The philosopher-king is the endpoint of a long developmental pipeline. He is raised without wealth, so he cannot be bribed. He's stripped of family ties, so he cannot play favourites. He's trained to see personal desire as a distortion of truth. Plato doesn't trust human nature, so he designs a leader who is sculpted beyond it. Yet, even the philosopher-king is ultimately an instrument of the system. His purpose is not to rule according to personal vision, but to maintain the architecture of the city as Plato designed it. He functions like the brain of the organism, interpreting truth and directing order, but never disrupting the structure. In this sense, he's less powerful than he appears. He is bound to the truth as the state defines it, and in the mission of preserving harmony at all costs. In Plato's world, even the ruler is ruled by the system itself. This leads to Plato's ultimate goal, a society that achieves permanence. No revolutions, no class conflict, no compelling myths, no ideological drift. The Republic is designed to be airtight, a structure that can endure not because it adapts, but because it prevents the conditions that require adaptation. It is order engineered to resist time. Plato imagines society as a kind of celestial mechanism, each gear turning endlessly, each role performed without deviation, each mind aligned with the function it was born to fulfill. This vision might feel distant, but its echoes are everywhere. Modern societies still rely on curated narratives that justify their structures. They still use education not only to teach skills, but to shape identity and belief. They still elevate experts, technocrats, and specialists to positions where they shape the lives of millions without the public ever understanding their power. They still deploy emotional stories to unify populations and suppress internal conflict. Plato was not designing ancient Athens. He was describing the logic behind every system that prioritizes order over freedom. You can see his fingerprints in contemporary propaganda campaigns that appeal to destiny, heritage, or national myth. You see them in systems where information is filtered, where the curriculum is shaped to protect the state's vision of itself, where social roles are justified through narratives rather than choice. You see them in political hierarchies that rely on experts who claim access to truth, while ordinary people are told they should trust authority rather than seek it. Plato's blueprint survives because it speaks to a truth of power. Order requires design. And this brings us to the heart of the Midnight Mind perspective. Once you understand Plato's blueprint, you can recognize when a society, any society, is being shaped, curated, and engineered. You can detect when narratives are crafted to unify, when education becomes conditioning, when emotion is weaponized, when hierarchy is justified as destiny. You begin to see the architecture beneath the surface. You begin to understand that no system of order is ever neutral. Every structure is an intention. Every intention is a form of control. Plato wasn't merely debating justice. He was building a model of society that could survive the chaos of human desire. A society where stability is the highest value and conformity the necessary cost. A society designed from the inside out. And once you recognize that design, once you see the blueprint, you can never unsee it. Because while the tools have evolved, the logic has not. The Republic endures not as a utopia, but as a warning masquerading as a dream. And so the final insight is simple and unsettling. Plato wasn't describing the world as it was. He was describing the world as power will always attempt to make it. The architecture of control, once imagined, never disappears. It hides in the background of every system that fears chaos. It lingers in every hierarchy that claims to be natural. It shapes the modern world quietly, restlessly, invisibly. And once you recognize it, you stand at a crossroads. You can follow the blueprint, or you can learn to resist it. Thanks for watching this episode of The Midnight Mind. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button for me. It really helps. Consider subscribing if you'd like to see more videos like this, and leave a comment below. I always like hearing your thoughts. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.